history isn't just what happened. It's what still matters. The decisions, the turning points, the stories that shape our present. This is history told forward. Conversations that looked back to better understand what comes next.
Today's guest is a man who lived on the front lines of intelligence, integrity, and consequence. John Kiriakou spent 15 years with the CIA, first as a Middle East analyst and later as a counterterrorism operative who led operations in hotspots like Pakistan in the years after 9/11. But it wasn't just his time in the field that made headlines. It was his courage to speak out. In 2007, John became the first U.S. official to confirm and publicly denounce the CIA's use of waterboarding, a move that cost him his career, his pension, and his freedom. He was charged under the Espionage Act and served 2 years in federal prison, becoming a prominent whistleblower in the post-9/11 era. Since then, he's become an author, journalist, and fierce advocate for transparency, ethics in government, and the rights of whistleblowers. His story is one of sacrifice, resilience, and an unwavering commitment to truth. Please welcome John Kiriakou. John, why don't we start a little bit? Give everybody a little bit of a background.
Sure. I spent 15 years in the CIA. The first half of my career in Middle Eastern analysis, the second half in counterterrorism operations. I blew the whistle on the CIA's torture program, which came back to bite me later. But before it bit me, I went on to be the chief investigator on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. And then the Obama administration fell on my head, charged me with 5 felonies for going public about the CIA's torture program. I did 2 years in prison. And since getting out, I've become an author, journalist, commentator, whatever you want to call me. I've got a bunch of books and I'm kind of entrepreneurial. So a little bit here, a little bit there, and you can put together a living.
Yeah, absolutely. This episode is going to be kind of dear to me because when I was in and overseas, I spent 68 months total between Bosnia, Iraq, Afghanistan, and
all the garden spots.
Yeah, the awesome places. But I really developed a hatred for the people. I didn't really even look at them as people. And since I've been podcasting and learned a little bit more about PTSD and trauma and so forth, it has opened up some rabbit holes that I have gone down. One, like, does the people that we fought, do they have PTSD? Is there somebody over there that is struggling like we do as Americans? And as I've learned, so is the Australian forces, the British forces. They've all been on my show and they've all talked about it as well. So I've looked at things a little bit different, and it's made me relook at the Marine situation at their prison camp and the things that they were doing. And, they're just, Geneva Convention is a tough issue for us to deal with. It does kind of handicap if you're following the rules when you're fighting other people that don't play by rules. However, you lose a little bit of your soul if you don't follow it with either. So I think this episode is going to be great to get into it. So let's dig into this a little bit. Let's start out with what brought you to the CIA? I mean, how did that come about?
Well, it's kind of a funny story. When I was 9 years old, I told my parents that I wanted to be a spy when I grew up. And the only knowledge I had about spying came from Mad Magazine, from Spy versus Spy, seriously.
Okay.
And then when I was 16, I told my dad specifically that I wanted to be a spy in the Middle East. I was fascinated by the Middle East as a kid.
Wow.
And then when I was in grad school, my grad school advisor turned out to be a CIA officer undercover as an academic. And he recruited me into the CIA. And so I started on Iraq I was the Iraq leadership analyst, and I had a degree in Middle Eastern studies. I had a master's degree in legislative affairs, but the focus was on policy analysis. And I got lucky a couple of times. My career took off. Then I got a little bored after a couple of overseas tours. I was tired of analysis. I made a very unusual switch to counterterrorism operations. After 9/11, I became the chief of CIA counterterrorism operations in Pakistan. And then I finished off my career first as the executive assistant to the CIA's deputy director for operations, and then as the counterterrorism officer at the United Nations.
Wow. Yeah. What a story to get to the CIA.
Well, and even before you ask me a question, I have to say, in your intro, you cut right to the heart of what every single one of us goes through. There are so many parallels between what CIA officers go through and what military, our war fighters go through. And so often it's either overlooked or it's out and out ignored.
Yeah.
And then we end up suffering for the rest of our lives.
Yep. A lot of people don't realize this, and I've never talked about it on my show. I did 10 years in the special ops community, and I'm going to tell you something. When those intelligence guys find out that the information they got was bad and somebody potentially could have even got hurt, they don't even have to get hurt. It could have happened.
Yeah.
They take it serious.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it sticks with them. And in my unit, we've lost people. And I know for a fact, I won't say names or anything, but I do know for a fact there's a person that still lives with that to this day about the people we've lost, and they take it serious.
They do.
PTSD and trauma and everything doesn't necessarily mean you had to be on the battlefield pulling triggers. It takes everybody all the way around to make us the fighting force that we are.
Absolutely true. One of my best friends, before we started recording, you and I were talking about where you've served, and you mentioned Bosnia, Iraq, and Afghanistan. Well, my best friend from high school joined the military as soon as we graduated from high school, and he ended up making full colonel over the course of a long career. He ended up with a college degree in environmental science. So they put him in charge of the burn pits in both Iraq and Bosnia. And we used to jokingly call him the garbage king of Iraq. But those burn pits gave him a very rare brain cancer, a glioblastoma, and he died at 46 years old. His dad was a veteran of the Second World War, and he just passed away. He was almost 100 years old. But he told me 2-3 years ago that not a single night went by that he didn't have a nightmare about being on the battlefield in Belgium or in France in 1942 and wake up screaming. 1942. That's how long lasting this PTSD was. And they didn't call it PTSD back then. They called it shell shock.
Yep.
But this poor guy never had a real night's sleep for the rest of his life.
No, at the end of the day, back then they put a label on it, but they didn't treat it. There was no help, no treatment. Even the stigma about mental health back then was similar to what it is today. It was looked frowned upon.
Yes.
And, I watched the units as I was getting out, and, I never admitted I was having issues, but all the way up to the point where I was getting out, I was already thinking about taking my life, and I hadn't even retired yet. And, I watched because the things that the military did for us was literally check the block type stuff. They brought in civilian counselors and they said, hey, nobody will ever know that you talk to them. They don't talk to the chain of command. If you're having problems, go see them. But then they put their office right next to the commander's office. So, nobody went. That was the easiest job you could have because you had no customers.
Well, you know what? We had a similar situation at the CIA. When I first joined, my boss was walking me around the old headquarters and then the new headquarters building. And he was pointing out, that's where the cafeteria is. That's where the Office of Medical Services is. And in the lobby of the new headquarters building, there's like a glass enclosed atrium. And he said, that's where you go if you want to buy baseball tickets or football tickets, or, you have questions about your insurance or what. And they have different windows, sports tickets and insurance. And then at the end, there was a window for, if you needed to talk to a counselor, you had some PTSD, there's something that's bothering you. He said, let me give you some friendly advice. Don't ever go to that window. And I said, why not? If it's supposed to be, to help you. And he said, because at the CIA, that office that's been set up to help people falls under the deputy director for counterintelligence, not medical.
Oh, wow.
Counterintelligence. And he said, they're going to freeze your career and then they're going to throw you out.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
terrible.
It's not, I watched it happen multiple times. Soldiers say that they're going to take their life. And we put them on suicide watch, and they literally will force soldiers to keep 24-hour guard on them, knowing that it pisses them off because now all weekend long we've got guard duty on somebody, and the way they're treated afterwards is over with. You're now a dirtbag, and any detail or anything that comes up, you're going on it, and it is not a fortunate thing. So. We talked about you getting there and the amazing vacation spots you got to go to, like Pakistan and Iraq. But what was the environment like inside the CIA immediately following 9/11? Did like the world just change for you guys?
Oh my God, it couldn't have changed any more than it did, and I can encapsulate it into 3 words. The morning that I was leaving for Pakistan, my boss came up to me and shook my hand because we knew what we were getting into. Our chief had given us this speech saying, we're at war. We all have to fight. Not all of us are coming home. Go with God. My boss came up to me and he shook my hand and he says, kill them all. And I said, really, John? We've gotten to that point already? And he just looks at me and he says it again, kill them all. And so I went to the airport and I was determined not to kill them all, to do, the best as I could. My job was to capture these guys, not to kill them. That was another office that did that. So, I did my best, but it changed everything. And not only did it change everything, it changed everything permanently. The deputy director for operations for whom I worked was fond of saying that the job of the CIA was actually very simple. The job of the CIA was to recruit spies to steal secrets and then to analyze those secrets to allow the policymaker to make the best informed policy. Yep. After 9/11, the CIA became a paramilitary organization whose job it was to kill, capture, and render anyone who could pose a threat to the United States.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I knew very little about the CIA's role. I obviously, was in the same compounds where there was all sorts of different forces, and I obviously I didn't know what they did. They came, they went, they hop on our aircrafts and leave, and we pick them up later and bring them back. And that was the way it is. But what I can say is it's not like James Bond. It isn't like what you see on TV.
No.
The roles they play, especially all the way down to our PsyOps teams at a much smaller scale, are doing real similar things. Like you said, the idea is to recruit somebody, whether that be pictures that you've taken, shaking their hand, which could be nothing more than an introduction, but now it looks like they're working with you, and threats and stuff like that to be done. Those same things are used against our soldiers. Those same things happen on our soil in a bar in America. And there's, court cases out there where people have gotten caught. You can see it for yourself. It's not secrets, but those things are hard to come back from. And so when you get over there, how is it that you start setting up and figuring out, okay, what is the best way? Because Pakistan has a border, if you call it a border, but you can walk across at any point.
Yes.
So that's what made this whole war on terrorism so difficult, was trying to control a country that had no borders.
And remember, those borders were drawn by the British.
Yeah.
And they didn't consult anybody. They just did it in London with a pen and just going down the map. So you're exactly right. It's exceedingly difficult. What I did when I first got to Pakistan, like literally, I had been in Pakistan for 4 hours, and I go to the station chief to introduce myself and tell him, that I've arrived. And the first thing he said to me was that he wanted me to come up with a standard operating procedure for taking down an Al-Qaeda safe house.
Okay.
So I had all the training, and then I did the advanced training. We called it advanced counterterrorism operations. I had advanced counterterrorist driving. I had desert driving. And I did everything the CIA had to offer. I had taken it. Weapons, every kind of weapon. And so I sat down at my desk with a legal pad, and I thought, well, I'm going to walk through this. What do I need to do? So I wrote 0200 at the top of the paper, because I would want it to be dark. I would want everybody to be asleep, because the element of surprise was so important. And then I wrote a list of things I needed. I needed extra weapons, ammunition, encrypted comms, walkie-talkies, battering rams, night vision goggles, all kinds of stuff. I went onto galls.com, which is a police supply house in Kentucky, bought $50,000 worth of stuff, put it on my CIA credit card, and about a week later, it all arrived in station. So administratively, 9/11, this was so soon after 9/11 that 9/11 was still an open criminal investigation. So you had to bring the FBI in. We had a small FBI contingent in Islamabad, so we would bring one or two of them on. And of course, you are in Pakistan, and it's the Pakistanis country, so you, of course, have to invite them.
Yeah.
And we got a tip that there was an Al-Qaeda safe house there in Islamabad. So we said, okay, let's give this a try, just see how it works out. 0200. We bust down the door with the battering ram, and we grab these two kids, two Tunisian kids, both 18 years old. They both burst into tears.
Yeah.
And one of them asked me if he could call his mom to tell him that he had been captured. Tell her that he had been captured. I said, no, you can't call your mom. So we just took him to the jail. And I remember saying to the guys, well, that was remarkably easy. Okay. Yeah. We got the bulletproof vest and all geared up, and it was easy. And so another thing that I had done when I first arrived is I went to the other friendly countries' embassies to introduce myself as the CIA counterterrorism chief. And so I said to each of them, if you have any addresses, lay them on me. We can hit them jointly, or we can do it on our own, whatever you want. So sure enough, I got a call from a friendly Arab intelligence station chief. He was kind of a dandy. He never wanted to get his hands dirty, but he was perfectly happy to give us the information so we could get our hands dirty.
Yeah. Sounds like
yeah. That environment.
Yeah.
Yes.
They're the same way, we are neutral.
Yeah, right. Which means they just pay everybody.
Correct.
So we broke down that door a week later, and we actually caught some serious people. We caught a member of Egyptian Islamic Jihad, which of course had merged with Al-Qaeda in 1995. But before that, they had killed President Sadat in a, globally televised assassination during a military parade. So this was a big catch. And we caught a couple of other mid-level Al-Qaeda people. And we started doing this, on the regular, several times a week. We would hit a safe house and grab people. And that continued until March of 2002, when we did a major raid, 13 sites simultaneously, and we caught Abu Zubaydah. We caught the commanders of both the Darunta camp and the Kandahar camp, and dozens and dozens of other people. So it went very well for us.
Yeah. Well, you answered a question that I never knew the answer to before. When I was over there, I had seen FBI agents too, and it really didn't make sense to me.
Like why are they they here?
Yeah, I was just kind of like standing there looking at him for a second, like, man, I guess they brought in everybody.
Almost everywhere I served overseas, almost had an FBI presence.
Yeah.
But normally the FBI presence was there to catch, the American who's laundering money in that country, or the American who's not paying his taxes, or the American who's doing child porn.
Yeah.
For FBI agents to go on nightly, counterterrorism raids, that was highly unusual and uncomfortable for everybody.
Yeah. I mean, 20-year career, that was the only time that I've ever even seen them on deployments was after 9/11.
That was it.
So it definitely changed the world for us.
And I worked in one huge station. It had, I don't know, 50, 60 people. Mm-hmm. And the FBI contingent was 3 agents and a secretary. So that kind of gives you an idea of how unusual it is for the FBI to be overseas. Yeah.
So, I think you learned something real quick on that house that you took down. The enemy isn't always what we picture the enemy to be.
I said to my colleagues that night, I said, this is the fearsome Al-Qaeda. This is what we're so scared of. This is a child.
Yeah.
These guys are children.
Yeah.
Now, of course, we weren't talking about bin Laden and Zawahiri in that conversation, but for the most part, that's why they fell apart so quickly.
Yeah.
They were just children.
Yep. They were forced soldiers. That's they were abducted, taken. Maybe they were orphaned from parents dying or whatever, and they were put in camps and taught to fight. And
that's
made
it.
A cause.
And let me add something. Almost to a man, they told the same story. These kids, they said that, they were generally 18, 19, 20 years old. Mm-hmm. They couldn't read or write. They were from isolated villages in whatever countries they came from. They had no job training or job skills and no jobs.
Yeah.
And they wanted to get married, right? They were at marriage age. But what man would want his daughter to marry this kid who can't read, can't write, can't work, and is probably going to beat up his daughter?
Yeah.
And so the local imam from the village would go to these kids and say, what are you doing here? Why do you want to stay in this village? You should go to Afghanistan and make jihad against the Americans, and we'll give you $300 a month. And if you're martyred, we'll give your parents $500 martyrdom bonus. And they said, okay. These guys couldn't find the United States on a map. They had never read the Quran. They didn't know anything about U.S. foreign policy. They were thinking $300 a month. It usually takes my dad a year to earn $300.
Yeah. Yeah. It is not a good picture,
Yeah.
When civilians hear us talk about how children are used as shields and everything else, it's one thing to say it. It's another thing to see it.
Yeah. And you can say that again.
It affects you completely different. So let's get into kind of where we discover about the torture and stuff. So Abu Zubaydah, I know I said his last name wrong.
Zubaydah.
Zubaydah. Okay. And the torture program.
Yeah.
How did this all come about? Because this was a pretty high target. We're no longer talking about kids anymore.
Yeah. We believed at the time that Abu Zubaydah was the number 3 in Al-Qaeda. That turned out to not be true. He was working with Al-Qaeda, but he had never joined Al-Qaeda and he had never pledged fealty to Osama bin Laden. But Abu Zubaydah was sort of an Al-Qaeda fixer. If you wanted to start fighting, he would get you into Afghanistan. If you were tired of the fight and you wanted to go home, he would get you out, get a fake passport, and get you back to your home country. He founded the House of Martyrs, the Al-Qaeda safe house in Peshawar, Pakistan. He founded the 2 training camps in Kandahar and in Helmand province. So he was a bad guy. He did a lot for Al-Qaeda, but he was not the number 3. And in the months leading up to the capture, he was captured in March of 2002. CIA headquarters, the leadership at CIA, was preparing for what to do once we caught one of the top 3 or 4. And they were convinced to adopt this so-called enhanced interrogation program, which was really a reverse engineered SEER program.
Okay.
That, we've always acknowledged as torture. And keep in mind, we had actual laws on the books that forbade us from doing exactly the techniques that the enhanced interrogations called for.
Yeah.
So there were 2 contract psychologists, James Mitchell and Bruce Jessen, and they had been contractors with the Air Force. They reverse engineered SEER, presented it to George Tenet at the CIA, were paid $108 million. And they flew out to the secret site. Well, Abu Zubaydah was the first HVT, high value target, that we had captured. And so they sort of experimented on him. But you know how these things go. They're cowboys, and this is a slippery slope. And the next thing you know, you're doing all kinds of things that the Justice Department never said you could do. Yeah. And it just got worse from there.
And I think one of the main reasons why it's not recommended is it taints the confessions.
You bet it does.
Not only now are you getting the information you want, but now you don't even know if it's true.
No, because and it's likely not, because the prisoner is telling you anything that he thinks you want to hear just to get you to stop torturing him.
Yeah. It could become a situation where it's even more dangerous, because now you're acting on this information that may or may not be true. And it puts operators in a situation where they're not really 100% sure what they're going to walk into.
That's exactly right. So, that's exactly. In the meantime, you're bogging down your analysts with hundreds or thousands of hours of garbage that the prisoner has given you. And this team of analysts that could be doing important work is sorting through all this trash, trying to figure out what's true and what's not true.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, it's tough, if you don't have reliable sources, it's much better. I think the interpreters programs was much better, where by being an interpreter, it eventually could lead to you having a life in America. And that motivation was a lot more effective than I think, torturing people. So,
oh my God, I agree.
How, if you can talk about it, how did you discover all of this was happening? Because I assume once the target was captured, they were turned over to another team.
Yes.
And put in a prison behind 800 walls.
Correct. Correct. So, when my tour ended in Islamabad, I went back to CIA headquarters. I became the chief of counterintelligence for the Osama bin Laden unit called Alex Station. And I was in the cafeteria one day, and a colleague of mine came up to me and said that he was glad he ran into me, and would I like to be certified in the use of enhanced interrogation techniques? And I had never heard the term before. So he explained to me what this meant. And I said, man, that sounds like a torture program. What are you talking about? And he said, no, the Department of Justice signed off on it and the president approved it. It's not torture. I said, let me think about it for an hour. So I went up to the 7th floor, the executive floor of the CIA. There was a very senior officer there for whom I had worked 10 years earlier in the Middle East. And I went in and asked his advice, and he told me to run screaming from the room, that this was a torture program. It was going to be a slippery slope right to prison, and just get away from it. And so I declined. But then, because I had captured Abu Zubaydah, I got promoted and bumped up to be the executive assistant to the deputy director for operations. And in that position, I saw literally everything that the CIA was doing around the world.
Wow.
And that was just when the actual torture sessions began.
Wow. So yeah, your eyes now get opened up like you're the brand new guy again.
Yeah.
You're coming in and seeing things that doors are opening that you never even knew existed.
Oh, I'll tell you, I had an old friend from analysis who asked me, so how is it up there on the 7th floor? I said, it is the most fascinating job I've ever had in my life. And he said, but don't you feel bad that you're not making a contribution like you used to in analysis? And I said, buddy, you don't have the foggiest idea what you're talking about.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, all agencies like this, I would say even all the way down to special ops and military, they work off of a siloed type system.
Absolutely.
There's a reason why they've added in that part of the documents. Not only do you have to have the clearance, but a need to know that information as well. Just because you have a clearance high enough to read something but have no need doesn't mean you get access. And I think that happens a lot even in our world. I was at the very low level. I was with the 160th, and I couldn't tell you half the stuff that other departments was doing.
No, and it's the same at the CIA. I don't have the foggiest idea what the guy next to me is doing. Yeah. I wrote in my first book, when we turned over Abu Zubaydah to the rendition team, one of the guys on the plane was a friend of mine. Mm-hmm. And so it's 4:00 in the morning, and the plane lands, and we're loading Abu Zubaydah onto the plane. And he said, so who's your prisoner? And I said, oh man, I'm so sorry, but you don't have a need to know. And he said, no, that's cool. And I said, where are you taking him? And he said, oh, dude, I'm sorry, but you don't have a need to know. And I said, yeah, of course, you're right. I don't.
Yeah.
And so that was it. Because my job was to catch him and put him on the plane. And the other guy's job was to fly the plane from point A to point B. And that was it. Yeah. Don't ask questions.
Yeah. And as we're going to get into it, the asking questions can lead you into areas that you're not sure you wanted to be in.
Got that right.
So let's get into the whistleblowing. So now you're got a penthouse view of the CIA, and you see this stuff going on. What led you to deciding I've got to say something?
I objected from the get-go. They asked 14 people to go through the training to torture these guys. And I'm sorry to say that I was the only one who said no. And it's not just that I had a moral problem with it. I believe strongly and correctly in retrospect that it was just simply illegal. Mm-hmm. So in the intervening years, I've done a lot of research into this. I like to think that I'm, one of the country's leading experts on this very narrow issue. We have a law in this country called the Federal Torture Act of 1946, and it specifically bans exactly those techniques that we were using. We executed Japanese soldiers in 1945 for waterboarding American POWs. That was a death penalty crime to waterboard somebody. And then in January of 1968, I believe it was January the 11th, the Washington Post ran a front page photo of an American soldier waterboarding a Vietnamese POW. And the Secretary of Defense, Robert McNamara, ordered an investigation the minute he saw this picture. That soldier was arrested. He was convicted of torture, and he was sentenced to 20 years at Leavenworth.
Yeah.
And then in 2002, like magic, it's all legal. But the truth is, the law never changed. Congress never amended that law.
Yeah.
We just decided it just didn't fit where we wanted to be in 2002, and we just pretended that the law didn't exist. Well, that's not a constitutional democracy.
No.
If you want to be pro-torture, then go on the record and change the law. And they just didn't bother to do that.
Yeah, well, it would have took too much time.
Yeah.
You know, and too much work, and
No.
and when you create the scenario where like you said, the president signed off on it, so it's good to go. Now in a court, you've got the president that says basically said, no, we're not going to do it, and yes, we are going to do it, and it kind of gives the people that are responsible for it a escape.
Yes. Yes,
You know?
exactly right. And the sad truth too is that all these guys who were at the top positions at the CIA in this period, they all went on to multi-million-dollar book deals and positions on the board of directors of a dozen different defense contractors. They all got rich. Nobody was prosecuted. Everybody got rich.
Wow. I keep going back to it because I know the Marines that was at that prison camp. Now it's not the exact same scenario. They were torturing people for the thrill of torturing people, not trying to get information, because they were just guards.
You're right.
They were.
That's right.
But they were prosecuted. And,
yes.
And they're doing some serious time.
Yes. Yes, you're exactly right. But why then should we have this two-tiered justice system?
Yeah.
I don't get it.
I think in today's age, that's on a lot of people's minds when they talk about politics. I think it's definitely like what shoes do you wear, and they pertain to you in this way.
That's right.
It really is.
That's right.
So how is it that, Congress especially, they want whistleblowers. I mean, now we've got whistleblowers for UFOs and everything else.
IRS.
Yeah,
Justice
IRS.
Department.
Absolutely. Yeah. So how is it that after you divulged this, and it obviously turned out to be not correctly done, right? It was supposed to have been no torture type scenarios. How did it come back to bite you?
I had a very powerful enemy in John Brennan. I've known John for 35 years. We've hated each other for 35 years. And he was Barack Obama's Deputy National Security Advisor for Counterterrorism. He was one of the godfathers of the torture program. He went on to be the CIA director. And he demanded that I be prosecuted. That's where that came from. On Capitol Hill, it's much better now. It was chaos up there when I was being prosecuted. But a couple of people have come forward as sort of the go-to protectors of whistleblowers. The most important of whom is Iowa Senator. I'm having a mental blank. Chuck Grassley. Okay. Iowa Senator Chuck Grassley. Now, Grassley's very old. He's 94, 95 years old. But he's the one guy that you can expect support from. Another one on the House side is Jim Jordan, the congressman from Ohio. He's chairman of the Judiciary Committee. He's more politicized on this issue, but he is a friend of whistleblowers. Rand Paul, the senator from Kentucky, is another one. And there's a Democrat, Ron Wyden, senator from Oregon. And that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Now, there are 435 members of the House of Representatives. There are 100 senators. We're talking about 535 people. And we can name 4 who support whistleblowers.
Wow.
So it's still an uphill struggle, but at least it's better than it was 10 years ago.
Man, that's not encouraging stats to get people to want to come forward. That is absolutely for sure. So now it comes out. We know that you were being prosecuted over vengeance, more than anything. And it ended up costing you your career and the fact that you had to go to prison for this.
Yeah.
I believe I read in one of your bios that you'd said that the CIA training had kind of helped you make it through your time behind the walls. How so?
Well, at sentencing, my attorneys asked the judge to send me to a minimum security work camp.
Okay.
Minimum security has no bars on the windows. The doors aren't locked. You're free to come and go as you please. You're just on your honor not to abscond and run away.
Mm-hmm.
And so the camps are always situated next to a higher security prison, because when there's a riot, then the guys in the camp go into the prison to do the laundry and do the cooking and stuff like that. The Justice Department had no objection to a minimum security work camp. The CIA did, however. And so when I arrived at the prison thinking I was going to the camp, they put me into the actual prison instead. Wow. So it took me about 4 or 5 days before I got access to a phone. And finally, I was able to call my lawyers, and I told them, hey, they put me in the actual prison with the mafia dons and the drug kingpins and the pedophiles. So what do I do? And my attorney said, oh, my God, well, we can file a motion, but it'll be 2 years before we get a hearing, and you'll be home by then. He said, I'm sorry, buddy, you're just going to have to tough it out.
Oh, wow.
And so I thought to myself, you've lived in worse places than Loretto, Pennsylvania. And I decided to rely on my CIA training to make sure that I stayed safe and stayed at the top of the social heap. So the first thing I started doing is to form strategic alliances. And my first alliance was with the Aryans, followed closely by the Italians. And knock on wood, I didn't have one single day of trouble.
Wow. Yeah, we have one of those minimum security and a not minimum security in my hometown there in Jessup, Georgia.
Oh, sure.
Federal. And believe it or not, the majority of the people that get taken out of the minimum security isn't because they got caught breaking out. It's because they got caught breaking back in. You know, they snuck
exactly
out.
Right.
They snuck out to go see a girl or
right. Or get a pizza or pick up a cell phone. Man, that happened almost every day. Like you've worked your way down in security to a minimum, and you're going to throw it away by sneaking into the woods to meet up with your girlfriend?
Yep.
Or to order a pizza?
Yeah.
I never understood that.
Yeah, me neither. But it definitely happened all the time. So that kind of shocked me that you said, you know, the first connection you made was with the Aryans, you know.
I had been in prison for, I don't know, less than an hour. Mm-hmm. And these two Aryans came into my cell, and I jumped up, I put up my dukes. I got to defend myself, but I thought I'm going to get my ass kicked. It's two of them and one of me. And one of them said, take it easy. Are you the new guy? I said, yeah. So he says, are you a fag? I said, no, I'm not a fag. And he says, are you a rat? And I said, no, I'm not a rat. I didn't have anybody else in my case. And he said, are you a chomo? I said, I don't know what that means. He goes, chomo, child molester. I said, no, I'm not a child molester. And he says, okay, you can sit with the Aryans in the cafeteria. And I was like, oh, okay. So finally, one of the Italians, actually the number 3 in the Bonanno family, came up to me. He lived across the hall from me, and he said, let me ask you a question. He said, why do you sit with those Nazi retards in the cafeteria? I said, I don't know. My first day here, they told me to sit with them. And he says, from today, you're with the Italians. And so for the rest of my sentence, I sat with the Italians every day.
Yeah, I think it comes down to numbers. You know, the Aryan nations is not the majority.
Right.
And I would imagine neither are the Italians. And so it does make sense in that aspect. But usually the Aryan nation, you would think that they had to have known that you were not in a gang. I mean,
yeah,
you don't look like the kind of guy that's just covered in tattoos. And
I don't have any. No, that's a good point and a good observation. So the Aryan table, the cafeteria is very, very strictly segregated. So there's a dividing line right down the middle, and the entire one side is black guys. And they tend to not segregate like the whites do. The whites are very clearly divided. The blacks, if you're black, you're in. They don't care if you're a pedophile, a drug dealer. They don't care what you did. You're in. On the white side of the cafeteria, the first set of tables is the Aryans. Some people didn't call it the Aryans. They called it the good guys.
Oh, okay.
Good meaning that your paper was good. So you're not a rat or a pedophile. And so like a table and a half are actual Aryan Brotherhood. And then a table and a half are good guys who are not members of the Aryan Brotherhood. Okay. The next set of 3 tables, one table is Italians, one table is Native Americans, and one table is sort of overflow for the Aryans if you can't all fit in that front row. And then behind them are 3 groups of 3 tables each. And that's where all the pedophiles and the rats and the gays sit. Gotcha.
So I'm assuming, your cover was kept while you were in there then, that you didn't work for the CIA. You didn't.
No, sir.
No.
My case was on the front page of the New York Times and the Washington Post. Wow. It was on TV all the time. And so there was one Italian who not only became my best friend in prison, but here we are 10 years later and is still one of my best friends in the world. He took it upon himself out of the kindness of his heart. After reading an article in the New York Times saying I was coming in 4 days to that prison, he went to every one of the Italians, the leadership people, to say, there's this guy coming on Thursday. He's a CIA guy. But there's a difference between the CIA and the FBI. The FBI is cops.
Yep.
The CIA protects us from the Muslims. And this guy hates the FBI as much as we do. And so open arms when I arrived. They welcomed me. And he saved me more trouble than I could even calculate. I'm deeply indebted to him. He's such a sweet guy. And then I'm proud to say at first, he was serving triple life without parole for a first-time nonviolent drug offense.
Wow.
He appealed, and they cut it to 30 years. First-time nonviolent drug offense. And then I wrote an appeal for him. And the Justice Department agreed to hear to oppose the appeal, but to allow a judge to hear it. And he won. And so he was released a year after I was. So I say to him, I owe him so much. And he says, no, I owe you so much. And his mother's like crying and hugging me every time we get together. And it's like, no, I love you. No, I love you. And real friend. True friend.
That's prison is another form of trauma. And
yes, it is.
Trauma does build bonds.
I read in a book called The Sociopath Next Door that 85% of the people in prison at any level, whether it's federal, state, or local, 85% have a diagnosable mental illness.
I would agree.
Stunning.
Yeah, those numbers are extremely close within our homeless as well.
Oh, I'm sure that's true. I'm sure that, and I'll tell you what, there are a lot of homeless people who commit crimes just so they can go to prison and spend the winter indoors. One of my cellmates was a guy from Pittsburgh. He was living in a cardboard box under a bridge in Pittsburgh. And he said, as soon as it started to get cold, he violated parole on purpose. Because he says, look, I don't want to, winter's tough in Pittsburgh. I'm from near Pittsburgh. So he didn't want to spend the winter in that cardboard box. And he says, look, I got a warm bed. I got 3 meals a day. I have medical care, free medicine.
Yeah.
So he violated parole. They gave him 6 months. He says, great. They let him out in the spring. Everybody's happy.
Yep. Yeah.
That's not the way life should be.
No, it should not be. And that's and this is for a whole nother show, but I talk about this on my other podcast as well. This is why the VA can't get a grasp around homelessness and mental health.
Yeah.
Both problems are combined, and there's a lot of little symptoms that bleed off onto this.
Yes, indeed.
And it's just impossible for one agency to be the jack of all trades.
It is. It's impossible, especially when that agency is underfunded.
Yeah. Yep.
And
Absolutely.
corrupt at the same time.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. As we've seen there with the whole waiting list agenda. Absolutely. So you do your time. You get out. It sounds like almost like this became a give and take. You accomplished a good thing for America.
Thank you.
But you gave up, X number of years of your life.
Yeah. And not just that. I gave up 2 years of my life, but the Obama Justice Department seized my federal pension. So I'm going to have to work till the day I die. I have no pension and nothing, no savings, no nothing. My wife and I split up. I entered into an 8-year battle over custody.
Wow.
Went bankrupt. I still owe more than $1 million to my attorneys that they'll never see because I don't have $1 million.
Yeah.
And, just getting a job, it's one thing. I'm lucky because I'm kind of like Washington famous.
Mm-hmm.
So people sort of come to me and, with offers here and there.
Yeah.
But when I first got out of prison, I got turned down by Uber because I'm a felon.
Yep.
By DoorDash because I'm a felon. I went to the local grocery stores. They wouldn't hire me. I applied for a job as a dishwasher in a diner and they wouldn't hire me. I got a job for one day as a baggage handler at National Airport. And then they fired me at the end of my first day because they didn't realize I was a convicted felon. So yeah, it's friggin' hard. Let me tell you.
Yeah. And what changes came about from you whistleblowing? Did the program get destroyed?
I am so proud of the answer to that question. So 6 weeks before I was released, I called my wife. I was able to call my wife every other day for 15 minutes. And I said to her, so how's your day? She said, it's great. I said, really? Great? Why? Why is it great? And she said, because the Senate torture report was released today and it proved that everything you said was true. And then John McCain, God bless him, John McCain stood up on the floor of the Senate and said that the country owed me a debt of gratitude because without my revelations, the American people would never have known what the government was doing in their name. And so he sponsored the McCain-Feinstein Amendment, which formally and permanently banned torture. And now it's illegal under any circumstances. So it was worth it.
Yeah, that's, that is awesome because, like you said, what we gave up was, endangering people's lives that were still over there fighting. And
that's right.
People don't understand how the smallest amount of OPSEC that given away is so powerful, much more powerful than a guy with an M4,
Absolutely.
And so I think people underestimate that stuff, the power of conversation over a couple beers with the wrong person.
It works.
It does.
It might take a little bit of time, but it works.
Yep. And the intel you end up getting is so much better, having leverage, because once you go down that road of torture, you lose your ability for leverage.
That's it.
You've now put the person in a desperate situation who feels I have nothing to lose. I'm going to die if I say nothing. And if they find out it's a lie, I'll die too. But I stand a chance of living for a longer period if I lie.
That's right. That's right. It's true.
Yeah, it is a brutal slope to go down. So whistleblowers and protection and ethics, right? So what advice, if somebody was to come out today and say, hey, I'm thinking about coming forward with this, and there may be some repercussions, what advice would you give them?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked that. Hire an attorney before you say a single word. I made a critical mistake by blowing the whistle and then hiring an attorney because I had to be reactive to everything. You want to be proactive. So don't blow the whistle unless your attorney is sitting in the seat next to you and is able to advise you.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But again, I on your behalf coming forward, you had two things against you. One, you probably didn't ever anticipate that what you're going to be saying is going to be held against you, because
no way.
You wasn't the assailant here. You weren't the person being targeted. You were the person coming forward. So why would you think that anything you say is going to be held against you?
Yes,
and
exactly.
The second part of that is every day longer that you don't say something, somebody's being tortured.
That's exactly right.
So it's not like you had the ability of time. We probably have a little bit more time before the UFOs come. So those guys probably have time to get attorneys and
that's right.
The right thing.
That's right.
So with that being said, there is areas in the government, right, that a lot of people talk about, one being the deep state.
Yes.
Do you believe that to be true? Because that's part of what comes out of the whole UFO whistleblowers.
Oh yeah, I do. We don't have to call it the deep state. We can call it the federal bureaucracy. But yeah, there's an entire subculture in government that's there for 30, 35, in some cases 40 years. They can outwait presidents. They're not going anywhere. Because of the Civil Service Act, you can't fire them.
Yeah. So
if they don't like a president, they just ignore him because they know in 4 years or 8 years, he's going to be gone and somebody else is going to be in.
Yeah. And truth be said, the power is in the Congress and Senate more than it is the president,
That's right.
So if you're friends with them on that side, you probably stand a pretty good chance to survive the next 4 years.
That's right.
So, this is really an amazing story.
It's been a long road.
I can imagine. I can't imagine the things that you went through, dealing with just the normal effects of combat.
Yeah.
On top of dealing with the people that you were serving. Coming against you. This is trauma on top of trauma.
It is. It is indeed. It's tough.
Again, we're talking about we're not talking about a local employer. So we're talking about a major agency. It's not like there's any recourse that you're going to stand a chance without just throwing yourself more in debt and probably nothing good come out of it anyways.
That's right.
So I feel for you in that side. We, I know we're getting to the top. I got just a couple more things. So your career goes this time frame and it ends horribly, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any resentment or regrets other than wishing you would have got an attorney to begin with? Is there anything that
no
you regret?
No regrets at all. You know what? You'll make yourself crazy if you think about regrets.
I agree.
And so no, I don't even think about it. Like I seriously don't ever think about it. You just have to look to the future and keep pushing in the right direction moving forward. So now, I write books. My 8th book is coming out in the next several weeks. I've got a contract for 4 more after this. I speak, I teach at universities and I'm 60 years old now, and I try to do what is fun, what's going to help me pay the bills for the next month or so. And you have to look to the future. You have to. You'll drive yourself crazy if you don't.
I completely agree. It is weird. The Lord gives us strength, but no brains. And then as we get older, we lose our strength, but we gain the wisdom. And it is amazing how he knows that if I put the two together at the same time, how dangerous it can be.
That's right.
And so I think it's really important that once people realize that path that you're on isn't about regret. It's the path that's taking you to putting you where you're supposed to be. And you'll find that when you get there.
This is not the way I envision my life working out.
Oh, I'm sure.
But I had to come to the conclusion that this is what I was meant to do. And so I embrace it.
Yep.
I do.
Yeah. I'm like I said, I'm retired. So I'm happier now than I ever was when I owned my trucking company and was making great money.
There you go.
And I'm helping veterans every day. I run a nonprofit, and I got a very small little media company that helps people with their podcasts. So,
there you go. Here, if you can see behind me, I've got my dad.
Oh, you muted yourself.
Sorry.
That's all right.
I've got my dad's flag right up there for all to see. I'm very, very proud of him.
Absolutely.
My family, my extended family, has a very long history in the Marine Corps, and every one of them served proudly. Every last one of them.
Okay. That's another reason where this podcast is for. It's about documenting everybody's story. And I think we all recently learned that we don't know in 30 years what the history books are going to teach about us.
That's right.
And if you want the opportunity to tell your side, this is the time to do it. Because once it's on the internet, it's there.
It's there forever. That's exactly my position.
Absolutely. My last question before I give you the opportunity to come forward and tell everybody where they can get all your books and everything.
Thank you.
If you could go back in time and pick a spot where you were in your darkest moment, and you don't have to talk about the moment, what would be the advice you would give yourself?
Things really do get better. They really do. You may be blind to it at that moment. I had one of those moments. I was going to do something terrible. And I think my wife realized just how dark the time it was. And so she wouldn't leave me alone.
That's good.
But it really does get better, even if you can't see it at that moment.
Yeah. Yeah. Depression is got the ability to really just control what you see and what you think. And it's not an enemy on the battlefield that you can outflank. It is something that gains total control over you.
That's it. You can't run from it.
Nope. And no matter what you do, whether you drown it with alcohol or drugs or gambling or sex, whatever your addictions are that stems from this, it's not going to let go of you until you work through it.
Yes, absolutely right.
And that's some great advice. And I hope a lot of the listeners will hear that and be a part of it as well. Let me bring you forward and give everybody the opportunity to find out where they can connect with you and where they can purchase books and all.
Thank you. Well, the books are all on Amazon, and actually almost all of them are on Amazon. The first one is out of print, so I apologize for that. But you can find me on Twitter or X, John Kiriakou. On Substack, I post everything that I do there. Also, John Kiriakou. I have a TV show on the Unified Network. It's unifyd.com. And also a company called IV Cyber. So it's ivcyber.com. Everything's out there. My own website is johnkiriakou.com, and it'll just send you wherever you need to go. Thanks for asking.
All right. I will absolutely make sure when the people see this, we'll get these links and everything up on the screen.
Thank you.
The books, and I'll also note them in the bios and the descriptions as well to make it easy for people to click.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Good to see you.
Good to see you too, John. You've got an amazing story, and I'm glad you was able to connect with us. I had a great time. Thank you.
Same here. Appreciate you having me.
You too.
You've been listening to History Told Forward, a podcast from the Barracks Media Network. Thanks to our guest for sharing their insight, and thank you for listening. You can find more conversations like this across the Barracks Media Network. We'll see you next time.